Welcome in to another episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Chris Smith, and as always, I am joined by Coach Smith. Coach Smith, how are we doing today?
Doing okay. A little tired.
A little tired?
A little tired. Yeah, rough weekend. Yeah, I got in super late last night, but excited to be outside and excited to talk to you about the weekend and what's coming up for us.
Yep. Big stuff coming up, right? Big end of the year coming up. But thank you for everybody joining in tonight. We're recording this during the day. It's beautiful, as always, most of the time in Chapel Hill. Right inside the dugout,
yeah,
right? I mean, how perfect is that going to be? I'm going to sit down with Shelby Barbie for our series Inside the Dugout, and so I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and right here, right by our name. Yeah, good job.
You like I did that, right?
I know. Good job.
Well, Coach. First, got back in late. I think you got back to the stadium around 1 o'clock, right? Talk to me a little bit about that. What was your travel back like? Like I've seen players already back in the facility as early as 8:30 this morning when I was setting up. I mean, it just shows how much dedication they have. Shout out to Kendall Frost. She gave me a good old dap and some love when she got here, and it was good to see her. And getting back in the cages. I've seen Blackwell already. Headed to class. She was like, the first thing she said to me is, "I'm tired."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a long weekend and it was a rough weekend. And the travel, it's always, I mean, it's such a blessing to be a student athlete and a coach and be able to do what we do. But there are some things that, come along with it that aren't the greatest in the travel and coming back late and then, having to get up the next morning and get up and go to class. I mean, it's not an easy thing when you're tired. And, our girls work really hard and, we got in, I guess, about 1. And probably by the time they got to sleep, it was 2:30 and had to get right back up and get going. So, long weekend. I'm sure they're tired, but they get today to regroup and we'll get tomorrow to practice and get prepared for South Carolina.
Well, good. Yeah, we're going to talk about that matchup in a minute. I'm excited. I want to kind of talk with you about that. Do we consider them a rival? Do we not consider them a rival? But we'll get to that in a minute. But let's go back to FSU, right? This weekend, unfortunately, wasn't able to grab a win there. But I think there were also some bright spots, some individual bright spots along the way that I want to talk with you about. But my phone was ringing. It's probably my wife. But last episode, we kind of talked about, how dangerous their lineup is top to bottom. And we definitely saw that transpire, throughout the weekend. How did you see that play out overall?
Yeah, they have a great lineup. I mean, offensively, they're tough. The top of their lineup did an extremely good job this weekend. I felt like we handled the middle bottom of their lineup pretty well overall. The top was just tough. And, if you try to pitch around one, you've got to throw to the other. It's a tough lineup to face and a tough lineup to game plan for. I think aside from one start, we got 2 good starts. We got some good relief at times. Just didn't put it all together. Honestly, we had some good pitching outings and couldn't get the offense going. And, they're a tough lineup. They're a tough team. It's a tough environment. Exciting to play in that environment, but tough. Not easy.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of good and passionate fans. I've had one individual fan that's, been in my comments and Andrew's comments that you had to, he was on with you earlier a few weeks back. That's just very passionate. We actually put up a post about tonight's show. He's like, "Go Noles." So, but he did talk about Emily Leggett, and he was like, "She's legit."
Yeah,
so,
yeah, she is.
At least he was able to see both sides. But going back to that, in game 1, you're able to put up 4 runs, and we talked about how dominant FSU's pitching staff is, just from top to bottom, but able to put up 4 runs. Talk a little bit about that and the approach in game 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think we came out game 1 and we were ready. We weren't able to execute and really follow through. We'd get runners on and we weren't able to push them through. But that gave us some confidence, that we were giving opportunities for ourselves and making things happen, and just couldn't come through enough. Here's the thing too, we put a lot of pressure on their pitchers. They were having to make pitching changes. They were, a lot of conferences all weekend really. So, we definitely were putting pressure on. We just weren't able to, in that first game, convert all of the opportunities we had. We left a lot on base.
Yeah, and in game 2, throughout the whole year, through our Coach's Corner show, we've talked about staying true to your identity, staying true to your strategy. In game 2, how did you feel like that transpired? Did you potentially get away the Did the players potentially get away from that? The moment, do you think it was too big for them, or they just didn't stick to the strategy too much?
I think maybe pressed a little bit too much in game two, knowing that we had opportunities in game one and, we were really close to, having an opportunity to be able to tie a game up and weren't able to do it. So I think in game two, it was more press and we really want to do it. And so let's press too much to try to do it. And when you see that, you're forcing at bats, you're swinging at pitches you shouldn't swing at. And I felt like we did that on Saturday. I think that Carly Maxton gave us a good enough start and our offense just couldn't get things going. Carly gave up 2 early, but then settled in and pitched really well the remainder of the game. And offensively, we just didn't do enough to get us back in it competitively. Unfortunately, when we get a good start, we've got to be able to match it with offense that's going to put pressure on them and that's going to, get us competitive in the game. And our offense just faltered that game.
Yeah, and it feels like, going a little bit more in depth to that throughout the 7 innings, feels like there's key moments of whatever sport it is, right, throughout the game that tend to define the outcome. Was there anything in game 2 that you felt like were key moments to the end score being what it was?
Well, the first inning, we wanted to set a tone early in game 2, and we wanted to do it offensively and defensively. And offensively, we come out in game 2 and we have bases loaded. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, right? To have bases loaded in the first inning, an opportunity to set the tone, to put some runs on the board, especially carrying the momentum from the 2 runs we scored in the 7th on Friday. Carry that momentum in, let's put some runs up in the first, and now the pressure is on them. That was our one opportunity to put pressure on them, and we didn't come through. We ended that inning bases loaded. They come out, they get 2. So the momentum's back in their favor again. So we had that in our hands, that opportunity to set the tone, to take the game right there, to really to put them on the defense. And instead we just kind of gave it right back to them. And that moment right there, unfortunately, you hate to look back and say that first inning is what kind of killed you, but I really think it did. I think it killed us in terms of our mindset moving forward, Florida State's mindset about us moving forward. It gave them the power back as opposed to us keeping the power there in that moment. And it was disappointing because we had, again, talked about how we fought so hard in game 1 for the little wins to prepare us for game 2. We might not have won that game, but look at what we did in the 7th. We made them change pitchers twice. We scored 2. We were 1 base running mistake away from having an opportunity to tie the game with Emily up the plate. So we did all of that to build this momentum. And here we are carrying it over. And we talked about, let's carry it over. And we had it right in our hands. And we just dropped it. And, at that moment, it's a little deflating, and you work to fight back and you work to get back in it. And Carly gave her heart out there to fight for us in the circle. Offensively, I think we got deflated. I think we started pressing and we just couldn't get in a groove.
Do you feel like, going into game 3, do you feel like some of that, it was hard to kind of get that momentum back, even with the reset of a new game going into game 3?
I don't know. We were prepared for the pitcher Francic to come back and throw in game 3. We were prepared. And I do think Jill had done such a great job in relief on Friday. We felt like giving her the start and letting her, kind of settle in was the right move. And I felt like we were really confident going into that game. I think on Sunday, the wheels fell off, honestly, pitching-wise. I think Jill pitched great, and then that one big hit, and then that was all it took. Offensively, I felt like our lefties did a really good job. What we found was lefties had more success with Francic over righties. She likes to run her curveball away, and we kept swinging at it, and it was out of the zone. It's very deceptive. She's got a great off-speed curveball. We kept swinging at it as righties, but she wasn't able to use that against our lefties. So we made the decision to put as many lefties in the lineup as we could, and you saw them have success. Sydney Horton with 2 hits, Brighton coming in with a walk. Emily obviously was successful. So and Reagan Jennings. So our lefties were successful. Our righties just couldn't get it going, and then that big hit when that just kind of was the dagger, and we couldn't obviously recover from that.
Right, and so you dropped 3 games there on the road in Tallahassee. I mean, all credit to them too, right? Don't want to take anything away from them. Fantastic program and what they've not only built over time, but just what they've been able to establish. And we've talked about it over what you're still building here, right? That we have a long ways to go. Kind of some of your words, right?
Sure.
But there have been some bright spots, throughout the series. And one name I kind of want to mention that's not on our notes this morning is Jill. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, of course, that big hit, but a freshman to come in, game two, right?
She was game one. She came in game one.
So game one, and performed at the level that she did, and then also going back to state. Where's the biggest areas of improvement that you have seen in her her pitching game since she has stepped foot on campus?
Well, Jill has the mindset. She's got the right mindset to be a pitcher at this level. I think that, that's what separates good pitchers and great pitchers is the mindset. Every pitcher we have on our roster, they're capable of going out there and throwing good pitches. Who has the mindset to handle the game at this level? It's not easy to be a pitcher. I mean, look at the scores across the country. It's not easy. So you have to have that killer mindset. You have to have that drive and that competitiveness and that want to battle a batter. You have to want to do that. Jill has it, and I think that's something that she's always had. I think, as a freshman in the fall, you're kind of getting your feet under yourself, learning things, figuring things out. And I think as the winter came and as January came and as she started to get some innings, that started to build that mindset, that approach that she brings to the circle. Her stuff's always been great. I think where she's really developing is being prepared to go in those moments and being ready and being big in those moments. And when you watch her, she is big in those moments. Her body language does not tell you anything, but she is ready. And that's what you need. And that's what she's been doing. And I think, her outing at state fueled the confidence. I think, she didn't have the greatest outing against Duke, but she also is confident enough in herself to know that that was a blip, that was a moment, and she's ready the next time she gets the ball, and she was against Florida State. And in a very tough environment for any pitcher, but specifically a freshman pitcher. Florida State's one of the best programs in the country, has been for years. They're a World Series caliber team every single season. They're top 10. The tradition there is amazing. Their facility, everything that they have there, it's awesome what they're able to do, right? And for her to be able to step in there with the composure and the confidence, I mean, that's big. And that bodes well for us in the future. We are building, right? We're building. We're trying to get things going. And having young players come in with that mindset that love Carolina, right? That's important too, that love Carolina, that want to be Tar Heels, that want to help Carolina softball elevate. That's Jill. And, what she's showing us this year, that bodes well for the future for our program.
Emily Leggett, like we say every Monday, right? It's hard to have a conversation or a coach's corner without mentioning her name, rightfully so. She ties the home run record at FSU on the road. What's it been like being able to coach somebody like Emily?
Emily's just amazing. I mean, she deserves everything that she's getting right now. She's such a hard worker. You talk about softball junkies and people that love the game and just love being out here and love training and love everything that comes with it. She's one of those. And, I think for her, when we talk about the portal a lot, that's a big part of college athletics. The portal's there for a reason, and for her, it was there to give her an opportunity to have this platform and to be able to showcase her skills and to be able to make an impact because she's capable, and where she was, that opportunity wasn't there for her, but here it has been. And she deserves everything that she's getting. She's a great teammate. She's came in and jumped right in here and become a part of the family quickly. Her family too. They're amazing, amazing people. She's just a joy. And, her approach, and I talk about it all the time, her approach is what impresses me the most about her. She is calm. She's steady. I feel like every time she steps in the box, she's going to hit a home run. And I mean, she doesn't, obviously, but that's how she comes across. She is confident and ready to go. And there's never a doubt. There's never a doubt that she's going to go in there and have a quality at bat.
Talking about that's such a good point, Coach, talking about Emily's calmness. but also just quiet confidence. I don't know if I've ever watched. I mean, I'm sure I have, right? You know, it seems like in sports, a lot of times memory is short, but it just seems like, I think when you say that, it really does sit home watching Emily. She is just so calm. I mean, even, you know, I've had people tell me, fans, I was like, hey, watch Emily. She never takes a practice cut. You know, she's just on the sidelines, and they didn't believe me. And then they watch her like, wow, she really doesn't. Yeah. You know, and then going back to Jill, just that confidence that she bodes so well. I think she has one of the best expressions when she gets that strikeout or that put out that, you know, that the defense helps and supports her sometimes. And I still think to this day, I mean, the media that you have here to support you at softball is fantastic, right?
They are.
The team that Alex is part of leading, they're just amazing. And I think that's one of the best photos so far this year is Jill. And I think you mentioned it last week, the one that I pulled for the player spotlight, where she's just like, you know, rah.
Yeah, that's her, and she's easy to rally behind. I mean, here's the thing: you have a pitcher like that in the circle, everybody out there is all in. And I think that that's something that gets missed too. Pitchers, you know, you have to pitch, right? You have to execute, but you have to have your team want to have your back. And I think that comes, you know, Jill goes out there and it comes natural. You know, you want to fight for Jill because you know she's fighting for you. She's celebrating everything you're doing. She's not pointing a finger if things don't go right. You know, she's all in, and it makes it really easy to be all in with her.
Love it. Coach, you know, big midweek game this week, and then also going to Virginia Tech. Let's go ahead and transition to that. 5 p.m. this Wednesday. You welcome in South Carolina. Let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. I was curious as I was working on today's Coach's Corner notes was, as a coach, I hear you talk a little bit, or not a little bit, but a lot passionately about the rivalry of NC State, the rivalry of Duke, and what that means. With South Carolina visiting, you know, it's interesting because when you're watching games on TV, a lot of times there's always a battle of Carolina, North
don't
Carolina,
even go
South
there.
Carolina, and it's
don't even go there.
But does Coach Smith consider South Carolina a state versus state rivalry?
I mean, you know, obviously I grew up ACC and grew up with, you know, that being a rival. And back when I played too in the 90s, you know, Duke didn't have softball, State didn't have softball, South Carolina had softball, and they were a World Series team. They were one of the best teams in the country every year. So that became, you know, kind of a rival. But, you know, the whole Carolina thing, I can't handle that there's one Carolina, right? And, you know, that's been something that was preached to me since I was little from my dad. And, you know, there's only one Carolina. So when they try to wear Carolina or say Carolina, it infuriates me. In fact, you know, scouting games, watching them play this week in Missouri, and they kept referring to them as Carolina. You can ask Coach Lyon. I was furious. Like, it just burns me up. There's one Carolina. That's it. And the fact that they you know, like to try to claim that makes no sense to me. You know, we are the nation's first university. We are the nation's first university. We are Carolina, and that's it. That's it.
1789?
1789, yes.
There's a reason why I have that burned into my skull this morning, but we won't go there.
Yes, don't.
With you know, with South Carolina being only a few hours away, do you ever find yourself in very competitive recruiting battles for a player?
Sure. I mean, South Carolina, you know, is a great team. I mean, last year they were a game away from the World Series. They're a top 25 team, and they always are. So absolutely, you know, we are going after the same players, recruiting the same players out of the portal, out of high school. Makes sense. We're so close. They have a great program. They have a great coaching staff that has done a phenomenal job in a short amount of time. Their coaching staff previously was at Charlotte and did a really good job at Charlotte as well. You know, so yeah, we go up against them quite a bit, you know, and it's tough. SEC, you know, a lot of players want to play in the SEC, so it makes it tough for us. They have one of the best facilities in the country. You know, they've got a really good program, and they take care of it and support it really well there. So yeah, we do compete against them quite a bit. And we have a lot of respect for what they do and what they're doing. They're a really good program, great staff.
Okay, off-topic question a little bit, and then we'll jump back in if that's okay. I hear you mention facilities a lot. How important is it for a program at your level, right, P4, ACC, SEC, to have some of the best facilities to lure in those types of recruits?
Well, I think it's extremely important for a lot of reasons. I mean, as a coach, first, it's about preparing your players and having a place for them to get prepared, training, scouting, video, having areas for them to get better and develop. That's first and foremost in my mind. But at the end of the day too, it's a snapshot of what your university thinks about your sport and how it supports your sport. And when families are looking for places for their daughter to go to school, they want to go to a place that is going to be supported and their daughter is going to be supported at the highest level. And I think your facility is the first thing that displays that. And that doesn't necessarily always equal the support, right? But it's an outward expression of that. And I think that that's a message that's sent directly to recruits when they come on. The first thing that they see is your facility. The other thing, it's their home, away from home. Our athletes, and you mentioned it, some were here this morning, they're here at night, they're here all the time. They spend more time here than they do in their dorm or their apartment. So this is an important place for them. This is where they're going to spend the majority of their time. And is it going to be comfortable for them? Is it going to have the areas that they need to be comfortable and to have a home away from home? I think that that's an important piece. And, that's an area that we're working to improve and we want to continue to improve because we know how important it is for our athletes.
Okay, so maybe one other question, if that's okay on that. And if you don't want to answer it, that's totally fine. We understand. Well, first, what's one – so two questions here. What's one area that you really love about your facilities that you feel like speaks volumes to Carolina softball?
I think the setting and the charm of it. I think what sets us apart at Carolina is the tradition, is the history, and the charm of our campus. It is unique. And when you walk on some college campuses, you have no idea, they're all the same. It's cookie cutter. Here, the history and tradition oozes out of the brick walkways when you're walking through campus. It absolutely does. If you can't walk through our campus and not feel it, and our facility to me is an extension of that. The brick, the setting, the trees. It is smaller in terms of our stands, but I actually don't mind that. They get full and the atmosphere is great here. And it's just the charm of it. It's a beautiful place to have a facility.
Yeah, small stands. You can actually hear everything that's been said.
Yes.
From the fans. Some people's dads.
Yep. Well, yeah, that's true.
I'm going to talk about it with Shelby Barbie later today. I always get to see her grandpa. I went up to him one time. He was standing on the backside of the stands. I was like, "Why are you out here?" He says, "I just got to be careful sometimes," or something like that. He's like, I'm a little stressed right now. So, okay, Coach. So this is the question you might not want to answer or want to answer. I'll leave it up to you. We just keep moving. If not, it's totally fine. What's one area that you would like to see improved?
With the facility specifically? Mm-hmm. Not a mind answering that. I mean, I think anyone that comes out and watches our games knows that our scoreboard is outdated, and you wouldn't think a scoreboard's that important, but it is. It is. I think one of the things that in today's social media age and how our athletes are kind of wired, you want to be able to see your face up on a video board and, you want to be able to have that atmosphere for your fans and for your players. Right now we don't have that. And that's something that is, to me, for the aesthetic of the facility and just that wow factor, and every other school has them, right? Like UNC Greensboro has one, Charlotte, Appalachian State, they all have them in the state and we don't. So that's something that is a clear outward improvement. And then I would say team areas. Our team areas are very small. We don't have a bathroom in the dugout. Areas are small for us to meet. We don't have space to do video. So that, it's just larger areas for our team. When it was built, teams were smaller. Now we're having 25, 26 players on our team. So areas need to be bigger and need to be, just expanded. And training areas need to be expanded, just to give our athletes some more space.
Right. Well, appreciate your transparency there. I've been trying to be an advocate for the scoreboard as of late. But definitely love to see that happen, and I think it will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not that we don't know these things need to happen. One of the things that I love about working for Bubba Cunningham is that he knows all of these things, and little by little, we're trying to make these improvements. And I think that in today's ever-changing landscape of college athletics, it's really difficult for administrators to keep up with all of the things that they need to do, with rev share, with all. You know what's happening in college athletics. It's hard. It's a hard job for our administration, and I don't envy them. And they are aware, and they're excited about what we're doing, and they're little by little trying to make some adjustments for us and for our athletes.
Yeah, because I believe, and then last one little thing here, I believe you have to have a video board to host regionals.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
So that would be a big thing when you have the opportunity to do that. You can do it. Okay, so thanks for taking that side road with me there a little bit. South Carolina, last question here. Wednesday at 5, when fans come to Anderson, you talked about looking at film already.
Yeah.
Were you doing that on the way home?
While we were there on the way home,
okay.
Yeah, it's constant.
What are some what are a few players that Carolina fans need to look out for? I know for myself, when I go to a game, I don't just like showing up. I like to know who I should be looking out for, that their name could be potentially called from the other team, because I just think it feels more engaging. When you're looking at that film, who do you believe some of those players could be?
Well, their number one pitcher, Jory Hurd, is really talented. She is the arm they're going to lean on, and they have been leaning on, and been the most successful pitcher that they've had this season. Typically their pitching has been a really big strength of theirs typically, and she is a talented pitcher. So she's someone that we envision seeing in the circle. This is going to be an important game for them in regards to their overall record and what they need to do for postseason. So, I feel like we'll see her on Wednesday. A tough pitcher. She has under a 2 ERA, which is unheard of nowadays in college softball. So she does a really good job handling offenses. And I have a strong feeling we'll see her. Last year they tried to start their number 3 or 4 pitcher, and it didn't go very well in the first inning, and then they had to bring in their number 1. So I don't know if they'll try that tactic or not, but my gut is telling me they won't, but we'll see. But she's the pitcher to look out for on their staff. And then offensively, they've got a transfer from NC State, Inslee, who is doing really well for them, and her power numbers have gone up tremendously since she transferred to South Carolina. Obviously we faced her last year, so we're familiar with her. She's a talented hitter who has a lot of speed too. So she's someone to look out for. And then their second baseman, her last name's Shelton. She's someone who also has been one of their leading offensive producers so far this year. They have a returning All-American in Roddy. I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name. Power hitter. Her average isn't as high as it normally has been, but she is dangerous. So we know that she's someone that can change a game in one swing.
Yeah, and it's not, as you know, of course, it's not always about batting average. It can be on base percentage.
Right.
Listening to coaches talk, a lot of times they actually just stay focused solely, not solely, but they look at it that on base percentage a lot. So, all right, Coach. Well, good luck this Wednesday. If you're watching today and you're thinking about coming out, come on out. In my opinion, a state versus state rivalry. Like I say that because I am country, a rivalry there. SEC school coming to Chapel Hill, 5 o'clock first pitch. Get on out here. It'd be a fun atmosphere. Maybe even get off work a little bit early so you can be here on time. We'd love to see you here at Anderson, like Coach talked about. Just a beautiful setting. You might have heard it a little bit in the mics. I forgot my wind buffers today for being outside, but for the mics. But I mean, it's just beautiful right now, right, Coach? I mean, Jalen out, the field crew was out here this morning at 8:30 when I got out here working on the field. The trees are swaying back and forth a little bit. So come on out here at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. Should be a good time. All right, Coach, Virginia Tech this weekend, going on the road to Plattsburgh. You got a game at Friday at 6, Saturday at 3, Sunday at 12. Let's talk Virginia Tech, another big-time team there. I mean, no slight of schedule here at the back end of your schedule, and I think that's a credit to going back early on. I think in our first coaches show, I kind of proposed the question of, any thoughts of the out of conference schedule. Not up, in toughness as it ranks to other teams, right? And people were kind of talking about that online, and I talked about that with you, and you made great points. Like, hey, we look at the schedule as a whole. And I think we can definitely look at it now. Schedule, as you wind down the season's very, very tough. But going to Virginia Tech, they're sitting currently at 38-8 overall, 12-6 in conference. And when I look at this team, I see a team that's just consistent.
Yeah.
Just consistently overall. when you think of the word consistency in Virginia Tech, what's some of the things that comes to mind and what they've been able to do this year?
Pitching and power. Their pitching is the best in the conference. They've traditionally had a top pitching staff, and they do again. So pitching wise, they're going to be really tough. And then power, they hit for power, and that's the name of their game. I mean, if you look at any of their social media or anything that they're putting out there, they're putting out distance of home runs, and they're talking about their power, and that's a big part of what they do. So pitching and power, they're consistent with those things. They're a tough team to play. Coming off losing a series that was probably not they didn't think that was going to happen. Unfortunately for us, we're going to get them off of that weekend, just like we got Florida State off of a sweep, but at the end of the day, that should show our team that they can be beat at home. They were just beat twice at home, and we know we're up for a challenge, but we've got to show up and we've got to give our best, and we have to make the adjustments that we didn't make from Florida State when we move into Virginia Tech.
Coach, the word power. Let's talk about that. They have 8 hitters, I believe, hitting over 300 this season. What's so difficult about navigating the lineup, that has that type of power, but also just consistently throughout the lineup of 8 hitters hitting over 300?
Yeah, I mean, you never get batters off at this level anyway, but you genuinely, against a team like Virginia Tech, you're not getting a batter off. You have to be on top of your game in the circle and on defense every single hitter. And, I think that it's hard to game plan and pitch around people because there's so many good hitters in the lineup. If you pitch around one, you've got to face the next, which is potentially just as dangerous. So, you have to be locked in for every single hitter and understand that every hitter can change the game, and you've got to be you got to be at your best, and you can't have any lapses. And I think that that's why they're successful. That's a hard job for a defense and for a pitching staff to face an offense like that.
How important is it to stay grounded in identity, headed on the road, another tough road matchup, coming off the FSU series? Of course, you get South Carolina here this week, for the midweek, but going there, another tough environment, 8 batters over 300. How important will it be for your team to stay true to their identity and their strengths?
Well, it's very important. I think anytime that you're facing teams that are going to be challenges, the teams on paper that are higher than you in ranking or statistical categories, I think there's a tendency to think you have to be different or more. And that's really not the case. You just have to be your best. That's it. And, that's all we ask of our players. We don't ask for them to be more than who they are. We believe we have really good players. We believe we have prepared them to be able to beat any team that we play when they're at their best. So we just need to trust that and be confident in that. So that's what we have to lean into this weekend. We don't have to be anybody different. We don't have to be anything more. Emily is going back to the school that she transferred from. You don't have to be different, Emily. Just continue to approach it exactly how you've approached it. And I think sometimes in those moments for an 18 to a 22-year-old that wants it so bad, that is working so hard and has given all that they've given to what we've done this season, I think you tend to try to do too much. And I think that happened this weekend, and I would love to see us just take a breath. Just take a breath and know that we are enough, and we can go out and be our best and compete to beat Virginia Tech.
Well, Coach, good luck this weekend being on the road. Again, Friday at 6, Saturday at 3, and Sunday at 12. Let's talk about our favorite segment.
Yes.
Player Spotlights. Let's talk about Katie Boggs, what she brings to the team, who she is as a person on and off the field.
Katie Boggs is a freshman from Ohio. She is out injured, so she'll be redshirting this year. Unfortunately, she's a talented player, infielder, great hitter. In fact, she probably had one of the best Januaries of any of our players in terms of her bat and what she was doing at the end of fall and the beginning of preseason, and suffered an injury that, just we needed to take care of. And so, on the bright side though, and I think she's got a great mentality for it. She's really locked in on doing all that she can to be a part of the team and support the team while she is rehabbing through an injury, and working her way back, and looking at it as an opportunity to grow this year and not and not dwell on the fact that she's not playing, and I think that's an important piece. She's going to be a big part of what we're doing moving forward. And I think her toughness and how she approaches things is really helping her through this difficult freshman year with the adversity that she's facing. She's a great kid. She was a highly competitive swimmer out of high school. She is the most fit person that I've ever coached. She is such a great teammate. Everyone loves having Katie around and loves Katie. She pours into her teammates. She's so selfless. And again, when you go through an injury, sometimes you get into a shell or you're worried so much about yourself. And she has not been that way at all. She is pouring into her team. She wants to be a part of everything. She's doing all that she can. And she's amazing. And I'm really excited to see what she's going to be able to do once she gets healthy and gets back with us next year.
Coach, just a side question real quick. Maybe we have a high school player. I know quite a few that follow the Hills on Franklin accounts. Say they come up with an injury or something like that. What's something that players can focus on while they're out in injury to not only be a good teammate, but to make sure they're ready when they get back?
Well, I think be a part of things. Don't isolate yourself. All of our injured players are at practice and they are involved with what we're doing, whether it's tossing in or feeding a machine, or they listen to every conversation that's being had by the coaches, and they're in every scouting meeting, and they're in the games, and they're hearing what we're saying, and they're in the hitters meetings. So be a part of it. Don't isolate yourself. Sometimes when people get injured, they think, well, I can't do these things physically, so I'll just stand over on the side and space out. But you can grow tremendously being just an observer, but being a present observer. And I think that that's something that we push our players to do when they're injured. One, it makes them still feel a part of things, so they feel like they're a part of the team. But two, they can grow through that, and that's an important piece of being out, is growing and not just staying still. And I think that we really push our players to do that, and I know Katie is doing that right now.
Well, good. If Katie's listening to this, we wish you a speedy recovery. Keep fighting, as we know you will. Let's talk Lindsey Lumsden.
Lindsey Lumsden, yeah.
What does she bring to the team on and off the field, and just as a person coming into the program?
She's powerful as a hitter. She has had a tough go here. She came in as a transfer, and Carly Myrtle had the year of her career in front of her at first base. And then, all of a sudden this year, here comes Emily Leggett. And, that's tough for Lindsey, because Lindsey is a talented hitter and a talented player. And this year we have used her more in a pinch hitting role and every now and then as a DP. But she has all the capabilities to be a very powerful hitter in our lineup. She's a player I root for. She works extremely hard, has a great attitude through. This is a tough thing, right? When you come in, she was freshman of the year in her conference when she transferred in, and she came in and didn't quite have the role that she envisioned, and that we envisioned, really, but not because of her, because of other players that just did incredible things, right? So, for her to be able to continue to grow and continue to be all in with the role that she has, and continue to put the work in for the future, that says a lot about who she is as a person, how her family raised her, and she's got an amazing family. She competes for Guatemala in the summer. So, she's amazing, and I really have a lot of respect for players that can have a role they're not necessarily that maybe they didn't envision, but they can go all in with it and have the future in mind and continue to work towards that. And we talk to her about the future all the time. I had a conversation with her this weekend about, hey, let's get ready. What are we looking at on defense for you next year? Emily's coming back. Emily obviously is having a monster season. Let's look at some options for you, because we know your back can help our lineup, and I think that we want her to stay future focused, because we think she can do big things her senior year next year. But an amazing kid, super bright, so smart. I think one of the things I love about coaching at Carolina, I'm a Carolina alum and I take pride in that. You have to be a good student to be here, and the degree here means a lot more than degrees at other places. And Lindsey takes that seriously. She is so bright. Every time I walk in the team room, she's working on something that I don't understand. I have no idea what she is doing, but I always ask her and she'll tell me, and it's right over my head, right? But just a great kid, and excited for what the future will hold for her next year here.
I quite often say that my degree from here was the hardest thing I ever did.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we talk about all the time. You are privileged to get a degree from North Carolina. There are so many people that wish that they could get in, and it is hard to get into school here. And the fact that our players get to compete at a high level and get this world-class degree, I mean, there's nothing better than that. It's going to set you up for success in life, and it sets you apart, and it really does. And our players take that seriously.
Well, good. Coach, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, everybody else will be seeing this at 9 o'clock tonight on Monday. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You know, good luck this Wednesday at 5 as you take on as you welcome South Carolina and then head up to Virginia Tech. We just wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for everybody for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Heels on Franklin. You can also catch all of our episodes over on Spotify. Just search for Heels on Franklin. Leave us a review there. We're really trying to grow that platform. You know, I say it every episode. We're a grassroots, I like to say movement sometimes as well. Just really shining a light on the program, the coaches, the players that so much need it and deserve it. And so that's what we're all about here at Heels on Franklin. And we'll catch you on the next Coach's Corner next Monday at 9 p.m. at night. Until next time,
go Heels.
Thank you for tuning in to Coach's Corner with Coach Smith of Carolina Softball. This episode is presented by Heels on Franklin. You can find all episodes on the Heels on Franklin YouTube channel and on Spotify. So whether you like watching or listening, we've got you covered. If you're looking for Carolina football coverage, be sure to check out the Tar Pit podcast, which you can also find on the Heels on Franklin YouTube channel and on Spotify. We will see you next time.